Hello everyone, welcome once again. Before we proceed, right, if this project or if what we are building reminds you of something you're working on or you've worked on, that's in and if this also helped you in your way, drop a comment section so it keeps us motivated to consistently deliver. So we'll be discussing about the inference pipeline and the DI container. But before we go to the inference pipeline and the DI container, we need to implement an interface for storage, which would say why that is important. So we need a storage.py. So yeah, we'll need like an IStorage, which will be the contracts for uploading an image and getting back a URL. So we'll be using Hetzner storage for this, which is a cloud provider. Hetzner storage. Okay. So what makes this easier is swapping to another storage provider would be easier, which would see. So we don't have to import our ABC. So let's just fetch this. Then we define our class IStorage, which has our ABC. And we have our abstract method, which we then define our upload our self image path. It's going to be a string and it will return a string. So upload the file and return a publicly readable URL. Okay, so we then move to our inference pipeline, like I said, which would be in core. Our inference pipeline. Inference pipeline .py. So this our inference pipeline is the one that orchestrates our predictions. So this is the business layer. Not a service, which we'll eventually see. It knows what to do. Run inference filter, but it does not know how those steps work. It depends only on the interfaces, which are the IModelRunner, IStorage, iPrediction Store. So it's never depends on pure YOLO model or specific storage provider. So let's proceed from src.domain.entities.detection .prediction rather prediction import prediction from src.domain.interfaces.modelrunner import IModelRunner. We also have to import iPrediction store. So let's just do this. Interfaces.what? Where is our interfaces? So we can see it as we proceed. Our prediction store import our iPrediction store. We also have to .storage import our IStorage store, our IStorage rather. So we can then define our inference pipeline. Let's import our logger from utils import from utils.logger import get logger is equal to our get logger. This is wrong. Okay, so we then define our inference pipeline class, inference pipeline. We then say def init. We then say ourself, it takes in our runner, which is our IModelRunner. It takes in our storage, which is our IStorage. We take in our store, which is our iPrediction store. Then it takes in our confidence threshold, which is a float. Threshold, which is a float. And it returns none as usual. Okay, so we then say self dot runner is what runner. We say self dot storage is our storage. Self dot store is our store. We say self dot confidence threshold is our confidence threshold. So we then have to define our run inference async, which is we async def run. We then have our self, we have our image path, which is our string. We then have our model version. We then have our model version, which is also string. And this will return our prediction data type. Prediction. So we then carry out the first step. 1. Raw inference, which will be either be touch runner or ONX runner. From it's from our IModelRunner now. So we then call it detections is what our self dot runner dot run inference, as we all know. Then we then provide our image path that was provided here. We do our logger.info inside here. We say in Inference pipeline run detections. Let's say detections in Inference pipeline run. We then have it as our what? Detections. So let's have a new line after this. So after we get that, we then say our business rule, which is what? Detections. We apply our business rule is D for D in detections if D.confidence is greater, which is our business rule, than self.confidence threshold. This should be confidence threshold. So we then upload our image. After business rule, we then say upload image to bucket, which is our image URL is what? self.storage.upload. Then we take in our image path. Then what else? We then have to say our fourth step. This is our second step. This is our third step. And this is our fourth step, which is persist to database, which is prediction is what? Our prediction, where we now have detections is equal to what? Detections. Then we then have model version is what? Model version. Then we have our image URL is equal to image URL. We then say return await self.store.save prediction. I know we do not have our implementation for the storage yet, but we are going to see that. And before we proceed, let's have our Hetzner storage, which is our service to upload images, to upload the image to a bucket online. So this is what our Hetzner storage.py. Let's say eventually you wanted to add AWS, you say AWS storage.py. It will still inherit our IStorage. Let's say you eventually have Google, you just say Google storage.py, and it will be easier for you to switch. But we'll be focusing on Hetzner storage, so let's proceed. This is our Hetzner storage, which implements the IStorage. This is S3 compatible and blah blah blah. It takes in whatever some credentials that we'd eventually see. So we say import UUID, then we say from pathlib import path, then we say import boto3, which we already install boto3. Then we now import our domain interface from src.domain.interfaces.storage import IStorage. Then we define our Hetzner storage again, let it inherit your IStorage. Cool. Then we define our init, dev init, taking ourselves, then endpoint URI that we are going to provide. Then we have our bucket. Our bucket is what? String also. Endpoint URI is also string. We have our bucket. We have our access key ID, which we are going to generate, string. We also have our secret access key. Which is also string. We also have our region name, which is also string. Again, if you do not want to use the bucket, you can just ignore this part. It is not really that important, but this is just moving us to production. So we then say our self.client is, we then say our boto3.client, then we say we need S3. Again, you can only know this if you go to documentation. Endpoint URL. This is our endpoint URL, sorry. Endpoint URL is what? Endpoint URL. We then have our access key, secret access key. But let's proceed. AWS access key ID is what? Our access key ID. AWS or AWS secret access key. Access key is what? A secret access key. So you might wonder that we are using AWS library in Hetzner. Hetzner supports it, right? It is S3 compatible, so we do not have to install a separate library to use Hetzner. Region name is what? Region name. So we then say our self.bucket is equal to buckets. Yes, we then say our self.endpoint URL is equal to our endpoint URL. We then define our upload function method, which takes in self and our image path, which is string. We then say the key is equal to, we create our own key, predictions, then we take in, like we had a UUID for uniqueness, then we take in our name from the image, image path dot name. This is wrong, this should be this. Okay, we have our key now, so we now say self.client dot upload file, which you can only know when you check the documentation. You then pass in the image paths. You pass in the self.bucket. You pass in the key that you want. You pass in the extra arg. We want it to be public read. Args is equal to access control lists. We need to be public read. Yes. So we then return the URL. Return self dot endpoint URL. Then we have ourselves dot bucket. Then we now take our key and we see this is our storage now. So we can then proceed to wire our storage and our inference pipeline into our container. So let's go to our container and wire as usual. So let's come to our inference pipeline from src.core.InferencePipeline. Import our inference pipeline. Yes. Then we also have our storage now. Our storage, let's import our storage from src.infrastructure.storage.Hetzner storage. Import what? Our Hetzner storage. Okay. So let's now define our, we already have our runner, we already have our model bundle. Let's define our storage, which is what? Storage, it will then be a singleton. We only want one. Dot singleton. We then say our Hetzner storage. Let's copy this for example, so we don't have to type that by hand. What are we passing there? Endpoint URL. Endpoint URL. Do we have it in our settings? Storage endpoint. Yes. What else? We need our bucket. Our bucket is what? Let's just paste this to make it easier. What is our bucket? Our bucket is storage bucket. Okay. Then our access key ID. Then our secret key, our secret access key. Then our region name. Okay, so let's proceed to update those parameters or those arguments. So what's our access key here? Storage key ID. Let's come back here. Let's get our secrets, storage secrets, and storage region. And storage region. So we have our inference pipeline in place, right? So let's even try something before we start wiring up our API. Let's test our inference pipeline alone, and before we can test that, we would need to have our inference pipeline. Oh, we need our storage. We need to pass in our storage and our store. We don't have our store yet, so I guess this is the end of this video for now, and we'll see you in the next video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.